Welcome everybody, my name is Monica Fernandez and I will introduce you to the open educational resources that we have developed in order to teach about the ethics guidelines of Trustworthy AI. As I just said, these educational resources were developed to teach about the ethics guidelines for Trustworthy AI. Some of you may already know that these guidelines were developed by the high-level expert group on artificial intelligence set up by the European Commission. As a basis for these guidelines, the group chose 3 pillars that should underpin AI for it to be trustworthy. First, it should be lawful, meaning that it should comply with all applicable laws and regulations. Second, it should adhere to ethical principles and values. And third, it should be both technically and socially robust and not cause unintentional harm. They also stated that AI should be developed in a way that they adhere to 4 following principles: respect for human autonomy, prevention of harm, fairness, and explicability. Now, from the 3 pillars, for pillars 2 and 3, the group developed 7 requirements for trustworthy AI that should guide the development and deployment and use of AI in Europe. These are the 7 requirements. The 7 requirements include human agency and oversight, technical robustness and safety, privacy and data governance, transparency, diversity, non-discrimination and fairness, society and environmental well-being, and lastly, accountability. So how are these requirements related to the educational resources we have developed? We transformed the 7 requirements into specific exercises and educational resources that help teach specific skills. These skills include the ability to identify the applicability of the requirements in different contexts and in different dimensions for different stakeholders. They also include being able to deliberate about the possible implementations of the 7 requirements. And lastly, they also teach you how to select and implement a course of action in response to an ethical analysis regarding the requirements. The 3 educational resources that we've developed include knowledge clips, a card deck, and a 7-step process. Now I will walk you through all of these so that you get a brief overview of what each of them are about. So, as the title already says, knowledge clips are simply videos, in this case 8 videos in total from 2 to 4 minutes, where they explain the requirements and the principles they entail. They give a real-life example of applying the requirements, and they finish with relevant questions concerning the requirement. These can be used to learn about the requirements or to get a little refreshment whenever you forget or get confused about what each of them really entail. Then we have the card deck. The purpose of using this card deck is to create meaningful ethical discussion in class and to understand the diversity in which AI can be applied to different domains. With 5 different sets of cards, you can get inspired by use case examples to think of how to use different AI techniques in different domains. By using a requirement cards, you can critically analyze techniques and use cases from the viewpoint of different stakeholders. This can all be done through a series of class exercises and games. I will give you guys one example later on so you get an idea of what a game looks like. But now I will walk you through the different sets of cards so you also get an idea of what they do. First, we have the AI technique card. This is a generic AI technique that can be used in many domains and in various ways. They also come with examples of the different applications of such a technique. Then we have domain cards. Domain cards contain a sector in which an AI technique can be applied containing multiple subdomains falling under the same sector. So in this case, we have healthcare that contains the following subdomains, including mental health, elderly care, imaging, diagnostics, etc. Then we have a requirement card. Each requirement card contains an ethical requirement that evaluates the trustworthiness of an AI technique applied in a specific domain. As you may remember from the 7 requirements, transparency is one of them. Then a stakeholder card contains a person's role in the development or deployment of an AI system having their own competing interests. For example, this could be money, efficiency, safety, privacy, etc. Lastly, we have a use case card. They give an example of the workings and goals of an AI technique applied to a domain where several stakeholders would be involved. In this case is the example of natural language processing being used for the purpose of a therapist chatbot. Here we have a game example. This is one of the 3 games that we have developed, and in this case it's a group design and discussion exercise. As a group, you can pick a domain card and a technique card, for example, natural language processing used in the healthcare domain. Together then you can come up with a use case for the domain and technique, and then each player can pick up a stakeholder card. Then as a group, you can pick up one requirement card at a time and start discussing that requirement from the perspective of your own stakeholder. Then you repeat step 4 for each requirement until you go through all 7 requirements. And then if you want, at the end of the exercise, you can rank the requirement cards in order of priority from your own stakeholder's point of view and discuss why you chose that rank. Lastly, we have the 7-step process. The 7-step process works as a thinking framework that teaches you how to approach case studies in a practical, problem-based, and systematic manner. In the exercise, you can analyze problems or use cases using 7 steps that with the requirements of Trustworthy AI integrated as part of the process. So with this process, you can identify and balance ethical, moral, and social elements and dilemmas related to AI in general, and communicate and defend your position. And lastly, as a group or as an individual, you can decide ideas for technical solutions or organizational processes. Now, these are the seven steps. The first one is to state the problem. The second step is to identify relevant factors and stakeholders. The third step is to think of possible solutions or approaches to the problem. The fourth step is to go through the ethical requirements and adapt your solutions accordingly. The fifth step is to make a tentative choice based on step 4. The sixth step is to test your choice using tests such as the harm test, publicity test, or reversibility test. And lastly, the last step is to review steps 1 to 6. Now, this is everything for now. I hope this introduction has helped you get a brief overview about the ethics guidelines of Trustworthy AI, its 7 requirements, and how they're implemented and used in the 3 educational resources. Thank you so much for taking the time to listen to this, and I hope you enjoy using these resources as much as we have enjoyed developing them. Good luck.